My name is Heather Davis. I'm the CEO of the Portland Timbers and Thorns, and I'm on the executive board of Sport Oregon. I am a fourth generation Oregonian. I grew up in Aloha, went to Hillsborough High School and the University of Oregon. After college, I moved out to the East Coast. I was a scheduler for President Clinton in the Clinton White House for a couple of years and was the director of scheduling for Senator Clinton her first year in the Senate. After that, I wanted to get into a little bit more substantive work, so I went to law school at George Washington University in DC. My first job out of law school was at a law firm in town called Covington & Burling. One of their biggest clients was the National Football League, and that's how I got into sports. So I worked in the sports group and corporate group at that law firm. When I moved to New York, I worked at a second law firm for a couple of years before I went in-house at the NFL, where I spent 9 years as the lawyer for their international and special events operations. Well, I think for a woman in sports, being a trailblazer is as much about just representation as anything. I think leading by example and showing young women and girls what's possible just by what I do every day is what being a trailblazer really is about. So I think one thing I've always really been proud of as a woman in sports is that I think that I have contributed in ways that go beyond my gender. I think I've stood up to the men in every room I've been in and been able to interact and succeed in that environment, regardless of the fact that I was often the only woman in the room. I was the lead negotiator for the NFL's deal with Tottenham Hotspur several years ago now, when they agreed to partner with them for London games. And Daniel Levy, chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, is a notoriously tough negotiator and helped negotiate that deal directly on their side. And it was a very successful partnership and we got to a very successful place. But as the lawyer, I sort of handled the nitty-gritty of that. And it was a big moment for me in that job and at the NFL. But one that, I was the only woman probably around that table. I don't know that I brought a necessarily unique perspective, but I think I proved that I deserved to be there and work with the best of them. So I've been to a lot of Super Bowls in my career at the NFL, but I think the most exciting live sporting event I've been a part of was the Thorns semifinal game last year. That came at a challenging moment for the NWSL and for the club, and was an incredible example of how sports really can bring a community together, even in difficult times. Soccer is exciting in a way that I think no other professional sport in the U.S. really can match. I love American football and I grew up on American football, but the intensity of soccer and how you can win or lose in those final seconds the way that we managed to do in that game is a level of excitement and thrill that I think it's hard to replicate. Sports teams, especially the sports teams here in Portland, are such an integral part of the community and so interwoven into the community and the culture here. The Timbers have been around long before any of us were here as part of this club, and the affiliations and passion for the club really runs deep. Sports teams also have a lot of stakeholders. Everyone has a vested interest in the success of their professional sports teams, from business leaders to government leaders to fans. And I think it's really important that we all remember that we're here for a limited amount of time with this club, and it's our responsibility and frankly our privilege to be able to leave our mark on it and to leave it a little bit better than when we arrived, but that it predates us and it will be here long after us as well. Being a fourth generation Oregonian has really always been central to my identity. Even though I spent most of my adult life on the East Coast, anytime someone would ask me where I was from, I'd always say I was from Oregon, but I live in New York or I live in Washington. And I always knew that I would come home eventually. My dad is from Southern Oregon and my mom grew up in Eastern Oregon, so I spent my childhood going to all parts of the state and have a real love for a lot of Oregon and what it has to offer, and I think it's truly a place like no other. Now I live in McMinnville in wine country, which is just a completely different place than it was when I was growing up. And I think what's happening in the Oregon wine industry is really exemplary of the innovation and pioneer spirit that Oregon has and that it's always been known for. One of the really special things about Oregon is how important the sports and entertainment industry is to the state and to the state's economy. And Sport Oregon's mission is really central to continuing to drive that. I think sports brings people together, it brings communities together. It's one of the few things that we as a society continue to come together around in what is, in oftentimes an increasingly polarized environment. So I think driving the sports industry here in Oregon is a really critical component of the future of the state, and Sport Oregon is really central to that. I hope everyone comes out to Providence Park these last few weeks of the season to support both the Timbers and Thorns. It's been a great season for both teams, some ups and downs, but some exciting soccer throughout, and we look forward to seeing everyone out here for the final few matches.